Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, we're talking about something that I feel is an incredibly important conversation. And let me just say for the record, the episode title is called How to Not Crash Out at Work, which is very much taking the vernacular from our fellow Gen Zers out there. I think if I was, really talking about it in my language as a Gen Xer, I'd say, how do I emotionally regulate at work? No, we're talking about how to not crash out, have a meltdown, get triggered, really get into your feels and, maybe say or do things that you can't quite recover from. So my special guest today, her name is Hiba Tanvir, and she's the creator of a highly distinctive methodology called Play and Pause. She brings emotional intelligence out of theory and into lived embodied practice. She's got an MBA and advanced resilience education from Harvard University and the Gottman Institute. She helps leaders play intentionally, pause purposefully, and perform at their best without emotional depletion, disconnection, or reactivity. She's also the co-author of the Career Breakthrough Playbook, focusing on EQ mastery for rising professionals. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Hiba Tanvir. Hey, Hiba, how's it going?
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me here.
I'm so pleased that you're here. And yes, we are talking about how to not crash out at work. I love that as a title.
My teenager uses that word. So I'm like, what? Is that really a title?
It's really a thing. And I know immediately when people see that come across their podcast, they're like, yep, I'm going to download that one. I need to listen to it. So why don't we just break down the basics first? What does emotional dysregulation look like at work?
So, Mary, emotional dysregulation looks like not having appropriate reactions and appropriate responses to situations happening around you, whether it's at work or at home. So specifically at work, it means getting easily angered, getting easily triggered, getting frustrated, any small irritation, an email that you didn't like, the tone you didn't like, someone showing up late, just little things that are happening in your environment are causing an exaggerated reaction in you.
Mm-hmm. And that's causing friction, right? Which is causing you to have an emotional response or feel it, exhaustion, right? From having to deal with whatever friction there is.
Exactly.
Right?
And Mary, a very important distinction there is the difference between a response and a reaction. So we're responsive human beings, right? If someone says something to me, we respond. The challenge is, and the crux of kind of what I work with is that emotional reactivity. It's when we're not thinking, we're being impulsive, we're acting from this place of, not our best selves. The upstairs, downstairs brain kind of is the idea there, but it's basically being reactive as opposed to being responsive.
Okay, so tell me what upstairs and downstairs brain means.
I'm so glad you asked. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in my workshops is, and I literally pull up a real brain, not a real, like a model of a brain. And I break it up into upstairs and downstairs because we're not turning this into a science lesson to keep it really simple. The upstairs brain, Mary, is where logic, reasoning, empathy, compassion, ethics, all of that lie. The downstairs brain is more of like our amygdala. Those are the parts of our brain that are meant to keep us alive. Their job is to ensure survival. They are constantly scanning the environment for any threats. They want to make sure we got to keep Mary alive. That is their goal. And so they both serve integral features. The downstairs brain is obviously, it was from an evolutionary perspective designed for back in the day when we had threats coming at us. We had wars and tribes and a lion coming out of the jungles. So you needed to be able to be fast. You had to be very instinctive. It was very like fight or flight. However, times have changed and we don't have those kinds of threats, but the body doesn't know that. So what we really want to do more of is develop that upstairs brain so that we can be more responsive. We can operate from a place of empathy, compassion, being able to be reasonable. And almost, I can say majority of all the problems we see happening in teams, happening in organizations is because people are operating from that downstairs brain. That's where reaction lives, and upstairs is where responses live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can imagine that if our bodies are built to respond to stress and be in survival mode, I think sometimes things do feel very amplified at work. Like, oh my God, this fire drill is very important. It's life or death situation. I could lose my job, blah, blah, blah. And then that's where the spiral happens, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So the challenge is, Mary, your body doesn't necessarily know the difference between you running late to work and being stuck in traffic and possibly there being an attack from an animal, right? The body is going into that same cycle. It's releasing those same hormones, those same neurochemicals. So it's causing you to be flooded with a lot of unnecessary hormones that really are not, they're not appropriate for the situation. And imagine if that is happening multiple times a day, all the time, on a loop: burnout, stress, quitting, health issues, emotional issues. Like, you could imagine what all it would lead into.
Yeah. And so how do we help our brains not freak out? Because it sometimes does feel like it's high stress, do or die kind of moment. It maybe, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but is it something that is having to do with the response, the immediate response, or is it, something greater than that?
So, Barry, a lot of times the way theoretically this is taught makes sense to all of us. We're sitting here calmly, and you and I both know that an email or running late to work or, a bad conversation is no reason for your body to be launching into this, right? We know that theoretically. We know that from our upstairs brain perspective. But the reality of the situation is that when we are in the thick of something, when the actual thing is happening, we are all defaulting to certain modes that have been in existence for a while. Yeah. That is where we got to retrain ourselves to be like, okay, what is a better way to deal with this? And the methodology that I've created for that, based on experience of having just kind of seen enough people, kind of observing team dynamics, observing home dynamics, is I take a little bit of a deeper dive and I approach it from a more foundational perspective, which is we need to add more play and we need to create more pause. Mm-hmm. Because what we're doing is we're building the reservoir of our emotional capital. Mm-hmm. Right now, when we're being this reactive, we're operating from very little. So that's why one more request, one more email, one more anything is throwing us off the handle. The reality is that most people will say, yeah, but don't do that. It's not good. Yeah, I know that. But what do I do? So my approach is more, let's work on the back end. And that's where the play and pause really focuses on that. So the play part of my play and pause methodology is focused on how do we generate high value emotions? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because your net emotional value is based on how much a positive emotion or high value emotion you are generating, and then limiting emotional leakages, right? Because we're human, we are going to get mad, we're going to get triggered, all of that. We're acknowledging that. So in this formula that I've created, you want to make sure that you are generating enough of that high value emotion, which is the part which is often missing. And the way that I coach and train on doing that is through play. Now, most adults think play and they're like, yeah, but we don't have time for that. We got numbers to hit. We got, there's no time for that. Well, here's what it is. Play is not something we need to leave in our childhood as, yeah, that was good back in the day, and serious people don't have time for it. In order for you to be successful in today's world and to continue thriving, you got to make sure that you've built in some play. And play comes in many different forms and formats, right? Micro play moments fundamentally, which is how do you build that in? It could be something simple as doodling. It could be something as simple as, just some movement. If you're at work, let's just take a walk. Let's just simple little things, cognitive play. Hey, Mary, what would you do if you were like 200 feet tall, right? That's just cognitive play. It doesn't require any movement, but it's an important part to generate that high value emotion.
And I feel like, this topic has come up quite a few times in this season in particular. And I almost feel like the pressure cooker of life is getting more and more intense. And so like the heat is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And this is why it keeps coming up, is that we all need these tools in our tool belt to help us release the steam, to release the pressure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where pause comes in. Right? So you're so right. That pressure cooker is building. We're feeling stressed. And now that moment has come where we have had a rough day and one more thing is ready to like, well, that's where the pause comes in. We all hear a lot about the pause, Mary, like, oh, take a pause. I wanted to pause, but I feel no one really gets into the nitty gritties of what exactly am I doing in this pause? Because I can breathe till 3. It's not doing anything. I'm just angrier now, right? So for different people, I found that they're like, okay, can someone walk me through that? And that's where I break down the pause into what is an effective pause, how long it needs to be for, what are things you can be doing, and why are you pausing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also wonder if there is a piece of this is, some companies have done return to work mandates, come back to the office. And we for so long have been working either remote or a hybrid kind of mix. And when you're working remote, are sometimes doing back to back kind of Zoom calls and having to be on camera and all the things. But then when you get back in the office, if the workplace meeting etiquette hasn't changed to actually be in person for meetings and build in those moments of pause in between meetings, and you're still doing back to back everything, you're just exhausted. And so to your point, I think the pause is incredibly important to, step back from how do we do work here in this culture, in this team, this department, and go, God, we need more moments of pause just to breathe and break, right?
And Mary, I think what's really important there is that these things have to be happening at a leadership level.
Yes.
Because you don't want to look like the person that needs a pause. Oh, you can't take the stress, or, oh, I think this is where we need leaders to embrace this and be like, hey, part of our, approach to making sure that people are feeling, emotionally replenished and not just on the go is we're going to build in some time between meetings. There's going to be a 15-minute buffer, right? Or something. And I think when you don't do that and you're not intentional about it, it just creates the spiral of people just going like and I hear this a lot from clients. Oh, I'm just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And that to me is a big, big red flag. And I'm always like, let's pause there. Because you were not as a human meant to just go through the motions. You were meant to go through the emotions.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about that, because I think that a lot of times in a day and age of striving for automation and insane efficiency, we have to remember that we are humans, right? Like AI is robots and things like that, and machines. But humans really do need that moment to reset their brain. Tell me more about that.
So exactly right. We are not, I think part of the fear around AI has been that, oh, it's going to replace us. Mm-hmm. It's only going to replace you if you have not embraced and flaunted your humanness. Mm-hmm. My favorite line to say is there is no better time in history than now to own your humanness and flaunt your humanness. And the challenge I see is that most people no longer know how to be human. We have this idea that we have to be super fast and, impeccable and flawless. And no, you don't, right? What's refreshing is seeing that there's humans who know how to be in touch with their own selves. So they're self-aware, they are self-regulated, they are socially aware, and they know how to build relationships. And those 4 things that I mentioned there, Mary, are the 4 components of emotional intelligence.
Tell me those again. 4 components. Break that down again.
Self-awareness, mm-hmm. self-management, social awareness, and relationship building. Yeah. And here's what I see the most of, Mary, when I have people say, oh, we want you to come in and work with our company. And basically, or even actually company or specific leaders, I just want to really focus on, being someone that people rally around and someone that people find inspirational. And I just want to be able to motivate people. And I'm like, that's great. But it's like, you can't say I want to have the cherry on the cake, but I don't want to work on the cake. The cake is really what you need to build. And it kind of works in that order, which is self-awareness. Are you aware of your own needs, your own strengths, your own weaknesses? Do you have an honest sense of self? And that's where you see a lot of people don't. So that's important to develop self-awareness. And then once you've identified, once you know that, hey, these things are my triggers, these things motivate me, these things really, frustrate me, good. The very important part is the one that I kind of specialize in, which is self-regulation. Mm-hmm. So just because I tell you, hey, Mary, I just need you to know that, when people are late, I get super mad, or when this happens, I get super this. And we think it's being self-aware. Self-awareness without self-regulation is basically a license to be obnoxious,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because if I know this about myself, it is on me to now figure out, what do I need to do about this? Often we become self-aware only to have other people pander to our egos. And I see leaders do this all the time, and it is not healthy because no one wants to feel like, okay, these are your issues. What are you doing about it? And if each of us takes that responsibility, we have a more emotionally intelligent organization.
Yeah. And then social awareness. Tell me more about that. What does that
So
mean?
social awareness is where empathy and compassion come in, Mary. So that is
Mm-hmm.
about organizational awareness. It's about being able to read the room. So you walk into a meeting, you're about to sit down with your employee or with someone on your team. You're able to pick up that they're looking a little away. They're not looking themselves. Someone has their camera off a lot. Someone has not been participating in meetings. Those are the things that you are able to pick up on. And that's where I make a distinction between empathy and compassion, because most people think they're synonymous, right? And they're not. A lot of us have become very focused on empathy, which is great. But the reason I focus a lot on compassion, and half that is the name of my company, HT Compassion, is because compassion is empathy in action. So it's not just attuning to the emotional climate. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear, you're going through this. Oh, that's empathy. But empathy is very short-lived, and most people are needing much more than that. They need that humanness. And compassion is basically taking positive, supportive action to alleviate someone's pain or suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I think yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to give you an example. For example, is you tell me, my whatever I'm going on, stuff is happening for me with my kid. I'm struggling, blah blah blah, and I can share and be like, oh, this happened with me. All of that is great. That's empathy. But compassion would be maybe me getting you a book, maybe me, showing up and offering to help out with something. It's actual action.
Yeah. And I would want to say just, obvious, but I think it's important to say this out loud. Social awareness goes both ways. So not just to the manager with their direct reports, but also from individual contributors all the way up, right? Reading the room is an incredibly important skill for all people in the workplace, right?
Exactly. It's not one-sided, because if it was one-sided, it's not being reciprocated. Eventually, one-sided relationships, we know, don't typically thrive much.
Mm-hmm. And that leads me into the next question, and I think we've already answered it, but I want you to go deeper. When someone does crash out at work, what is the manager's role versus the individual's role in that moment?
Lending someone your calm and your cortex is the biggest thing that you can do as a manager. It's also the biggest thing you can do in any role, whether you are the employee, whether you're the manager, whatever capacity you're in. I will say that people who are higher on the, call it the power differential, whoever is in that higher role, the responsibility for staying calmer lies on them. And let me elaborate. So I get into something with my teenager. Okay. He's pressing my buttons. He's saying everything that's wrong. Oh, I know. But being the adult in this situation, it's my responsibility to hold it together. Right. Similarly, at work, we have our family business. We have a team of about 15 to 20 teachers working there. Even if a teacher is dysregulated, rightfully so or wrongfully so, as the person with more authority, it is my responsibility to be in control of my emotions and to be able to lend that person my calm and my cortex.
I love that concept of lending your calm and your cortex. I have seen it multiple times before working with clients where the manager, the person in charge, is not very emotionally intelligent. They drop a bomb in a room and then they leave the room to not even handle the situation. Or worse, they're escalating it even further. And so it's so interesting to me. And I absolutely think you're right. The one with the most authority or power in the room should be the role model for everyone else, right? Because that's how you're learning how work gets done here and what behaviors get tolerated, applauded, or ignored, right?
And that leads perfectly, Mary, into this idea of co-regulation. As human beings, we are constantly co-regulating, right? I'm picking up, you come onto a Zoom call. If you're like, hi, Hiba, I'm going to be like, hi, Mary. But if you're like, hello, Hiba, we'll go, hello, Mary. We're constantly mirroring back and picking up on each other's energy. So what that means is that we have a lot more power and influence than we imagine. And that means that we have to handle it responsibly. So how do you lend someone your calm and your cortex? Well, again, that's where play helps. You need to be building that. You need to have that solid reservoir. I cannot give you something. I cannot lend you something that I don't have, right? But I'm saying I can see that someone is completely crashing out. They are losing it. And rather than now trying to, knowing that at this time I can lend them some of that calm, that is the best antidote, or that's the best buffer for them to kind of return to a more regulated state.
Yeah, I also wonder in those situations when the meltdown has happened in a very public way, either in front of other coworkers or whatever, what would be your advice for that manager? So they're trying to be a good role model. They're trying to remain calm and get the meeting back on track. But how do they handle it after the meeting's done with the person? Like, what's the follow-up conversation? That's the learning moment to, avoid something like this happening in the future again.
So I think having a conversation that acknowledges and also sets expectations, or an honest conversation of, what I could have done differently, what you could have done differently. Yeah. And moving forward, let's come up to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So it's like a very 3-step. We're not going to brush this under the rug. We're not going to pretend it didn't happen. It could be, I wanted to check in on you because I saw that in the meeting you had gotten, you were super upset about some stuff. I wanted to make sure I took a moment to really understand what that was, because I know it's pretty out of character of you to behave this way. So I wanted to understand what's going on, so that I can better support you. So language matters so much. Tone matters. The way I say this, it's not just what you say and how you say it, it's also where you say it. Mm-hmm. So being cognizant of those factors, because when someone is in that dysregulated state and they're still not fully back in their upstairs, every word you're saying is exaggerated in their head. Your tone is exaggerated. So being very careful about that is key.
And I imagine also that pause is important too, to let there be a little bit of time in between that very high triggered moment and when you follow up too, right?
For everybody involved. Totally. And again, to acknowledge that, yes, just because someone got more power and more authority, they are also human. So not to put this expectation that, well, you're the manager, so you just had to be like, a monk in a monastery. No, we are human. We also have our stuff going on. But that's where I talk a lot about the 90-second pause, Mary.
Tell me more.
So most of us, as I said earlier, we know that we need to pause. We know that a pause is good, but no one is quite understanding why you're pausing. So I'd like to get into why you're pausing. You're pausing, Mary, because when you're triggered, your brain has gone into this mode where it is flooding your body with a lot of neurochemicals, right? It takes 90 seconds for those chemicals to do their thing. They're in your system. 90 seconds is that time. But after 90 seconds, you have the opportunity to decide whether you want to continue engaging with this emotion, with this state of mind, or if you want to change the narrative. So what does that mean for us? That means that give people their 90 seconds at the minimum. When someone is having that meltdown, do not try to get in. Do not try to think that I'm going to save the moment right now. You're not. Give them those 90 seconds. Realize that it's the body. This is a horrible time to be stepping in because they're physiologically not in a state where they're going to be able to be rational.
That's so good. So Hiba, let's say the tables are turned and it's your boss that crashed out at the meeting. Yikes. You don't have the authority to say, hey, now let's go. Here's some expectations of how you should show up next time when we meet. Because then all of a sudden you've got a pink slip. But how do you handle that if it's your boss, your manager, that is lacking in the EQ realm and crashing out, not just once, but maybe multiple times.
So unfortunately, it happens more than we would like. And I get that. Like, okay, I know what to do if it's someone I'm reporting to me. What do I do if it's someone I'm reporting to? I think, first of all, before approaching any conversation, in that moment, again, choose it's best. No engagement is the best thing you can do. Let that moment pass, right? After you've gotten your thoughts together, I would, in whatever format works, communicate that once I'm sure that this person is now in a better space, communicate that, I just wanted to share some things that I know help me feel better at work, help me thrive better at work. And a lot of it is built on the styles of communication around me. And I find that when I'm, certain, body languages or certain styles of communication really don't help me be my best self. And I'm here and I want to be able to give my best. I just wanted to share that maybe specific instances, like, I know in the meeting last week, you had said something and I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly. It's very important when you're having these conversations to create room for the other person to explain themselves, not go in with, you meant this and you're a jerk. But like, I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell me, what was going on, or making sure I did not misunderstand what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's a gentle way of holding accountability without putting someone on the spot.
What also works, I think, is, again, the pause is so important. This is not immediate, but if you're having a check-in kind of meeting with your boss and you work in person, go for a walk. Because I think when you go for a walk and you're not eye to eye contact, you're walking in parallel, you can actually say the hard thing a little bit easier, and it's received a little bit easier when you're walking instead of sitting in a boardroom and like going, this is what I found and this is what has worked for me and this is, really troubling, right?
Oh my God, Mary, I cannot believe you said that, because that is exactly why I have, in my emotional regulation experiences that I do one-on-one, as soon as I'm meeting somebody, we're going for a walk on this beautiful creek behind my office. And I'm telling you, the things that people share when they're walking, oh my God, it is a very different conversation. And exactly that, one of the things that I have been piloting are walking workshops for companies. So going in and we're walking together, because exactly as you said, when you're walking, your body is in a more regulated state. You can have those conversations. I think the format of conversations that we know to be our norm is actually very, very counterintuitive. Because what happens the minute I say, Mary, I need to speak with you? Your mind starts with something.
You tense
wrong.
up.
I'm already moving into my downstairs brain. But I'm like, hey, come, let's take a walk, right? And now it's just nature. I always like to say, use nature to your advantage. It's right there. It is the best regulator.
I love that. And again, you have a book that you co-authored called Career Breakthrough Playbook. Get unstuck, get ahead, master the skills, the 6 essential skills that drive professional growth and success. Tell us a little bit about the chapter that you wrote in that book. It's all about this, right?
It's all about this. So Mary, this book came around in a really cool fashion. It really reminds me of the power of collaboration and saying the right yeses. There was a leadership coach, Will Luking, who is the guy that led this book project. He had me on his podcast, and then he invited me to be part of a virtual business summit. And then he shared this vision that he has this idea for this book, where he wants to bring in experts from different, parts of the world. And he says, I would love for you to contribute your work on emotional intelligence. And I was like, oh my God, I forever wanted to do something like this. And so it just became exciting, because I think when you have to put your thoughts into words, it really tightens your thought as well. And you've written a book, so you know what that's like. It forces you to have clarity. And so, we have got authors from Germany, Tunisia, India. We've got 3 authors here in the US. And what's kind of great about it is that each of us is sharing our expertise in a very laser focused, no fluff fashion. So kind of my 3 chapters go into the basics of emotional intelligence, the components of it. I make that distinction between empathy and compassion. And then I talk about that humanness, which is, why you want to make sure that you own it and you are constantly practicing it. And eventually it's not the intelligent leaders that we really want. It's the emotional leaders, emotionally intelligent leaders that, even the World Economic Forum says that emotional intelligence is one of the top 10 critical skills for the future.
I have no doubt about that. I mean, especially as AI and automation is on the rise, our human skills have to be at the very best because that's what, AI doesn't replace humans. AI works alongside and accelerates humans if used correctly. And I think that that's where you need emotional intelligence, great listening skills, discernment, those kinds of things that make you drive performance, not only in yourself, but in your teams as well, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So you have lots of workshops that are out there. And by the way, you can find all the details on everything we talked about at our show notes over at thesimplifiers.com. But her website is also htcompassion.com. And that's where you're going to find out about the walking emotional regulation pilot workshop. And she's also offering a promo code for our listeners, 20% off. And the promo code is SIMPLE for a 45-minute play and pause session. So make sure to, give her a buzz and talk about it, see if it's right for your team. And then you have this other workshop that I'm super curious about called Using Lemons to Make Leadership Zesty. Tell us about that workshop.
Oh my God. So that is one that I'm really excited about because I just recently curated this whole thing around lemons, and I put together a group of women in a room who were, high caliber, high potential, and kind of used the lemon analogy a lot. And it really got me thinking how interesting. There's so much to learn from lemons. And we normally associate lemons with, oh, you sold me a lemon, the lemon law. It's when something goes wrong. And this idea, this workshop is built on this, that lemons are not just for the lemon juice. The zest of the lemon comes from that bitter, harder rind. So as leaders, as managers, as employees, the more we can embrace that there's going to be some bitter, but you can't get to that lemon juice without it. Just as I said, you can't get to that relationship building, all that fun stuff without going through some of that hard work individually by working on yourself. And then also in relationships, it's not going to be hunky dory. You're going to have to learn to have those uncomfortable, awkward, dreaded conversations. But once you learn to embrace and find the zest in that, the lemon juice is all yours.
I love that. It's such a great concept. So again, you can find all the details over at the show notes over thesimplifiers.com. So as we wrap up, there's a few questions I'd like to ask you that I ask everyone that come on the podcast. And here we go. First off, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Strong Ground by Brené Brown.
Tell me more.
So it was a gift by a friend for my birthday. It sat on my coffee table for a really long time. I picked it up, and in true Brené Brown fashion, it's like one paragraph makes you put your book down and really think, because I think she really gets into the heart of how transformations really work, the elements that go into it, understanding just the power of neurolinguistics. It just kind of zooms out and looks at how any great system is built, and it touches on the human factors, the all the different elements that go into it.
All right. Awesome. We will link that up in the show notes. If you guys are curious, you can go over to thesimplifiers.com. So tell me, who's somebody in your network, somebody you know personally that you just feel like up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
I would say Lakeisha Reed.
Okay. Tell me more.
So Lakeisha Reed has her own company. She goes into talking about those targeting and helping companies and teams work with those invisible elephants in the room. What limiting beliefs do you have, and how to work beyond them? And she puts together really neat workshops and talks and really works with you in kind of identifying them and then having a very clear plan of how to work through them.
Love it. We'll link her up in the show notes. If you guys are curious about her, again, head over to thesimplifiers.com. I believe that gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Oh my goodness. So much. I'm grateful to be on your show, first of all, Mary. I'm grateful that our paths have crossed. I'm grateful for my parents. I think that they have really shown me what emotional intelligence looks like in action. And so it wasn't just something I was learning theoretically. I saw my mother being someone who was always known for being very, very emotionally astute and emotionally intelligent. And I think having that is just as a role model is something I'm so grateful for.
I love that. And I'm so grateful that you have crossed my paths as well. So thank you to Callie Miller out there. She had introduced you to me. So love that.
Callie.
You can find Hiba over on Instagram. Her handle is in the show notes. Again, thesimplifiers.com. We'll link it all up so you can connect with her. And my final question for you today is this. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and they're thinking, yeah, but life is hard at work. I barely have enough time to eat lunch or even go to the bathroom between breaks. And I am running on empty right now. So yeah, I'm crashing out at work and I don't really know how to take a pause. And I certainly am not thinking about playing right now. What's one thing you could whisper into their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment?
What you don't have time for is exactly where you need play. Because when you start playing, time starts being created for things that you really enjoy. So doodle away. If you don't have time to play, just doodle while you're on a meeting and you're getting bored and you're just doodle. Find anything to just release some of that. Create movement in any shape or form.
Maybe it's just a rage doodle.
Rage doodle, exactly.
Maybe that's just it. That's step one. And then, get into regular doodling after that. Hiba, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, Mary.